your close rate, trust with your clients, and then ultimately help you gain and retain more households would be the goal. So with that being said, I want to introduce you to our special guest today, Preston Ingalls. So Preston, if you want to hop on your camera there and just wave to everyone, say hi. Perfect. You can see Preston there, you guys. I'm going to give a little bit of background on Preston, and then I'm going to go through some slides, and then I'm going to come back and bring him into the conversation for his perspective and insights, which I think you're really going to appreciate. So just a little background. Preston is part of the Champaign district, and he's originally from Bloomington, Illinois, the great town of Bloomington, Illinois. And then he attended University of Illinois from 2018 to 2023 for undergraduate and graduate school. He started with country as a scratch rep in April of 2024. He was a member of the football team while he was there at U of I. And then on a personal note, Preston enjoys being outside, hanging with friends and family, and doing anything active. So if you guys could do me a favor, throwing this out to the group, click on your react button there at the top of your screen. Give him some applause, please, for taking some time out of his day to share with you all. Get your pen and paper ready if you would like to take some notes. See all the applause coming in there, Preston. So again, thank you for being with us. I'm excited that you're here, and I'll bring Preston in here in just a few minutes after we go over a few slides. All right, first thing we're going to talk about, we're going to start with auto on the front end of this, okay? And we're going to dive into LMAQ, lowest most accurate quote. So the lowest meaning the best rate, accurate coverage, including all the discounts on the initial quote right up front and not waiting to add those. I just want to give you a little example here. If insurance agent A quotes without all the discounts, while agent B or company B is applying all eligible discounts or all discounts that they could be eligible for right up front to provide that best price, it could be a lost opportunity for agent A. And that's really what we're finding, especially when it comes to 4 key discounts on auto. All competitors, or most competitors, we do know we're putting these discounts on their quotes right from the start. And if you're not providing the best rate, then chances are someone else probably is. So this will help boost your close rate. And these 4 discounts that we want to hone in on today are these listed on the screen. So advanced quote, preferred payment, multi-policy, and driver IQ. And you might have heard this be referred to as the 4-stack. But as a bundle, what happens is a lot of times these are getting left off. And actually, I won't even say a lot of times, most of the time, these are getting left off the initial quote that reps or assistants or associate agents, that whoever is doing that quote, these are getting left off. And in fact, 80% of the time, as a whole, when it comes to the quotes from our company, these 4-stack discounts are getting left off of there. All right, so reflect for a moment here on your own situation. Like, are you including multi-policy every time, but then maybe waiting to introduce or talk about preferred payment because you like to pay your policy monthly, or maybe you assume someone else wants to pay monthly, maybe your prospect or your client? Are you leaving off driver IQ every time for some reason and waiting to bring that up at a later opportunity? Hopefully it's not a later opportunity where you missed the first one. And because of these discounts, are you not sure maybe how they work? Maybe that's why you don't add all 4 of these up front. And maybe you're someone who is adding all 4 of these up front, and that's great. But if you haven't, I want to go over some of the differences today if you do start doing that, and encourage you just to be open-minded about that, especially as you hear from Preston and why he does that. And the other thing when it comes to these is you can actually do a report for your agency on, are you using these discounts on your first quote? All right, I'm going to show you here at the end of the session where you can access that report, but there is a report that you'll be able to look at to see, hey, how am I doing on these discounts? And then not only you, but if you have staff running quotes, are they providing all these discounts on that first quote? All right, so that's what we're going to talk about first. These graphs here, these recommend, or I should say these actually represent the national sum of first quote with those 4-stack discounts, the 4 I just mentioned, and then a separate sum here, that graph on the right, of last quotes that include the same discounts. So on the left, if you focus there first, we see the percentage of four-stack usage at the national level, right? On the first quote. In Q1 of 2025, only 19% of all quotes included the four-stack discounts in the first quote. And then on the right, that same quarter, 2025 first quarter, where 19% might have started with that four-stack, only 70% of all last quotes included those. So really what we can see here is that the overall percentage is very low. Preston's is very high. So he's going to talk to you here in a minute about why he includes those from the very beginning. But overall, the percentage is pretty low. And again, if you're thinking, well, I wonder what my percentage is, you'll be able to see your usage because you have access to a report. And we'll show you that again at the end of the session, okay? So I want to do something here from the group. Don't click your react button yet, all right? But I want to see how many of you have seen this discount utilization report that I just mentioned that you have access to. So I want you to give me a heart emoji if you have seen that report. Okay, so I see some hearts coming in there. That's good. Do me another favor and give me a thumbs up if you have not. If you're like, man, I've never even heard of that report. I can't wait to check mine. All right, perfect. So if you have not, you're not alone. And I know that you will at least take one thing away from this session, if not more today, on how to access that report, because we're going to show you where to find that. Okay, so good stuff there. I'm going to bring Preston in here in just a moment. But before I do that, I want to point out something specific here with this quote. So what you'll see here on this quote on the screen, this first quote here includes the discounts, good payer, preferred payment, and a good driver. All right, so that's what you see here on this first one. Now let's take a look at the second one here. Just by adding, this doesn't even include the advanced quote discount on either one of these, okay? But just by adding the multi-policy discount and driver IQ, it's lowering the quote a little over $100 every 6 months. Okay, this is going to vary by state, but think about your quotes, and I would encourage you to maybe take one of your pending auto quotes that you have and apply all 4 discounts, not just 1 or 2, and see what the premium difference is if you haven't done that, okay? Okay, so with that being said, I'm about to bring Preston on here. Preston, again, thanks for being with us. If you want to go ahead and unmute, you guys, Preston and I have not rehearsed any of his answers, by the way. I did tell him the subjects that we were going to talk about, so we met very briefly to go over that, but he is going to be sharing straight from his experience what he does to be successful in both areas that we talk about today. So Preston, compared to that national average that I shared or showed the group, that 19%, you have a very high, in fact, over double that percent that you were including the 4-stack discount on all your auto first quotes. So talk to us a little bit about why you think that's so important, why you do that, and do you think you've written more business besides maybe not what you might not have otherwise written when it comes to these 4 discounts right from the beginning? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me on, Julie. I appreciate it. Yeah, we didn't rehearse any answers or anything like that, but I thought I'd just share from my experience. I started as a scratch rep last April. Obviously, it's been a crazy time for everybody who's veterans, but for me, I just, this is just kind of the way it's been since I started, so I don't really know anything else. And a little bit about what I was doing when I first came in was I was buying a lot of leads. And I know a lot of people don't like buying leads. Some agencies do it, but I was buying so many leads and I was quoting in the system so much, just trying to learn how to make it the most, the discounts, making sure that liability limits matched up with what, they had and everything like that. So I think using all the discounts, like Julie's showing, you can see, especially when you're looking at households that are, 3 or 4 autos, or if they have teen drivers, when you start putting on driver IQ and all those different things, even if she showed that example where it goes from $600 to $496, the higher the premiums get on more vehicles, you'll see that premium comes down even more. So that's something that I think is huge. And I think that everybody kind of has an internal price where they're going to switch. Some people, you can go to them and say like, hey, we're going to save you $40 a month, and they're like, I'd rather just not go through the trouble of switching, and I like my guy, they're good enough and this and that. But then you show them a quote where they're, hey, I'm saving you $130 a month, then they're like, hey, I think that's the price point where I'm going to go ahead and switch. So I think just adding those on is such a little difference that you do, and then it's a lot more enticing to everybody that you're sending quotes to. And a lot of this stuff is very simple, like Driver IQ. Everybody knows that insurance companies have an app, or at least most companies at this point in time have an app where they can track your driving and rate you. And so a lot of people are already familiar with these things. Now, I would say some of the times that I don't have the discounts put on would be preferred payment. When we get a soft credit report, if you see they've got poor credit, a lot of times I'd see that with leads where it'd be, they wouldn't have the best credit. Obviously, we're for insurance companies, so that's not going to be a great rate for us anyway. But I would always put that on a monthly payment as opposed to showing them a semi-annual amount. Because, even if I talk to them on the phone, they're like, I pay this monthly. I'm not interested in paying this, semi-annually or whatever the case is. So a lot of times that's where I'll run into not having a 4-stack is if I don't have a preferred payment added on. But stuff like Driver IQ, those things are super easy to put on and they're easy to explain and people understand those things. And so that's definitely been nice. That 10%, like I said earlier, if you're showing someone a $3,000 semi-annual premium for a larger home, or household, next thing you know, you're trimming off $300 and you're showing them a quote for $2,700 just by putting that one discount on. So I'm a big fan of it. I think it's good, and I think it's super easy for us, especially with the way the auto rates are and stuff like that. You got to do a little bit more creative things to win right now.
Yeah, I love that you said that because my quote really probably didn't show a great amount that it really could drop by because it was just one car, right? So I like that. Thank you. And let's hone in a little bit on Driver IQ. So I like that you brought that up too, Preston, because there might be some, and I know I've talked to reps before, like, it tracks you. And if you present it like that, so I want to know how you present that to people, because if we have someone out there saying, or maybe a staff person, it might not be the rep, but like, I know you probably don't like it that it tracks you. Like, then that makes it sound like, oh, yeah, you didn't make it sound fun. I don't want to put that on. So how do you present that when you're talking to someone about Driver IQ?
Yeah, that's a good question because sometimes people get a little bit scared about it. They don't like, they're like, hey, I don't want the government tracking me. It's like, well, newsflash, I think they'd be able to find you. But I think I had one person come in, and this is kind of funny. This is kind of how easy it is to do Driver IQ. Is I had like an older couple, and I had already done their home, and they were moving from Michigan, and they come in, and I asked, when we're setting up Driver IQ and this and that, I asked the guy for his phone number. He's an older guy. He didn't even know his phone number. It's taped to the back of his phone case, and we still got him signed up for Driver IQ. So it is pretty simple and it's pretty easy. I think. Whenever I'm explaining to somebody, I'm just saying, you're saving 10% the first 6 months, no matter what. A lot of people are nervous that we're going to use their, driving history against them on the renewal. And I think that's a big thing where people are like, I'm not the best driver or whatever the case may be. I don't want to get penalized in the future for that. So whenever I'm explaining, I'm like, this can do no harm to you. You're going to save 1%. Even if you're the worst driver in the state of Illinois on our app, you're still going to save 1%. It's never used against you. There's no reason to not do it unless it's, people who are saying they don't want to be tracked. That's really the hardest thing. And sometimes with the older demographic, they're the ones that are more so against it or opposed to it. But I just try to tell them it's never going to go against you. There's no way that it goes against you, and that's part of the beauty of Driver IQ. So.
Yeah, and this is the third set of this series that we've had on these econs. So I want to hear from you too, Preston, on this when it comes to the Driver IQ. So the last one we had a rep and his associate agent share that they help the client right there, the prospect right there, whoever it is they're talking to about Driver IQ. They're like, we have them put it on their phone right there in the office, like when we're with them, we're in front of them, because if they leave and we're like, hey, download this app, like who gets around to it? They forget. Then you're having to follow up all the time. It's like, man, just get it done while they're there. Is that something that you've done too?
Yeah, I think if you can do it and they're sitting in your office, you can be like, hey, I'm going to go through the app store. I'm just going to show them exactly what I'm clicking. Like, this is the app that we're going to do. This is how we set it up. And you can take care of it all right there. I think the biggest thing too is like, agents are scared that they're going to get all these emails because we all know you get the emails that are like, hey, this person hasn't enrolled in 30 days. They're at risk of losing the discount. And then you're like, all right, well, I'm going to have to reach out or I'm going to have to do whatever. That they're getting text reminders about it. So they know. And before that discount comes off, they're getting a text saying, this is your last chance for Driver IQ. Like, make sure to get listed or else you're going to get dropped on the discount. So they know they're aware of it. But I think if you're going to do it and they're sitting in your office, you can show them exactly where to go, how to do it. It's pretty simple to register and sign up. I think the biggest thing is making sure that they're at least on an Apple phone, that their maps are set up to track like during the app. Because some people won't allow tracking during the app. And then it's like, well, you're not going to give them any information. That's not going to work. But a lot of stuff's done on the phone now, and a lot of stuff's done over email, just because it's kind of the world that we live in. So some people you can't do in the office, and you have to shoot them a text or whatever. Like, hey, did you get the Driver IQ in? Like, is everything going well with that? So if they're in the office, yes, but a lot of times, you do stuff on phone calls and stuff like that, and that sometimes they just have to take the next step themselves.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. That's super helpful. I don't see any questions coming in yet in the Q&A, but throwing this out to the group, if y'all have any questions for Preston, please drop those in the chat. We are going to put a link in the Q&A at the end of the session where you can find information on all of these discounts, because like I mentioned, if it's that you're not comfortable explaining them or you don't know how to explain them, we want to make sure that you're educated on some of those so that you're able to educate the client, okay? So I'll ask you one more question here, Preston, before we move into home. And if anybody else has any questions in the Q&A, we'll do that as well before we move into home. My question for you is, and this comes up a lot, like, hey, I don't offer apples to apples coverage. Like, I'm making recommendations based on their personal situation. I'm applying all the discounts, and then if they end up not doing auto with me, they just do home, at least I've shown them what that multi-policy discount can do for them and how much they can save. So talk to us a little bit about that when you're building your quotes, the coverages and the multi-policy there.
Yeah, I'll start with the multi-policy. I'm putting it on everything pretty much, unless I see, like, especially with leads, you're kind of playing a game where you're trying to figure out, like, all right, what does this person have? I don't know them. I just have this quick, brief information. So if I see they live in an apartment, and it's like, hey, they live in an apartment, 213. It's like, all right, well, I'm not going to put a homeowner discount on that, but I might throw renters on there. That's probably what I'll do. But I'm always trying to put multi-policy stuff on. And if I'm talking to them on the phone, I'm like, hey, you're going to save $500, at least probably by doing this. I'm like, even if you go somewhere else, you should do this. Like, if you're shopping on price, you should be doing a multi-policy discount. That's just kind of the way that insurance companies have been. Everybody's doing bundle deals. Everybody's making it that way. So I always try to make that clear to people. And I try to tell them, like, hey, if we're going to do this, either way, you should at least look at this quote. Because this is, what it's going to save. It may be $800. You never know. But it's usually significant. So.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you, Preston. Appreciate that. There is a question that came in the chat from Michelle. She's asking, how do you apply the advanced quote? Isn't that something the system controls, or can we make that happen? It's based on the date that you enter, 7 days before the expiration date of the client's current policy, right? Do you have anything else on that, Preston? Okay.
Yeah, 7 days. Yeah. So if let's say they renewed on the 11th of this month and you quoted it yesterday, you'd get the advanced quote. There you go.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you. And Doug, I see that you were asking the same thing. So hopefully that helps you guys. And then Alex is saying, what's the name of the report? I'll show you that, Alex, at the end. It's called the Discount Utilization Report. And we're going to drop that actually in the Q&A at the end. So we will definitely be giving you that at the end, Alex. Great question. I don't see anything else coming in right now. So if you guys do have other questions, go ahead and get those in there. In the meantime, we'll move on to some of the home. And I want to share this auto. Thank you, Preston, for everything you shared on auto. And I guess before I move on, is there anything else you wanted to share that you think might be helpful on any of this auto stuff before we move into home?
No, I would just say just mess around with it. Just like you said, just go onto a quote that you have that you didn't write, and then just throw on some of the discounts, see what it looks like. And then if you're quoting people, try to quote them a week out, try to quote them 2 weeks out before their renewal, try to get that advanced quote discount. You might as well, it's not gonna harm you at all. You might as well just try it and see if it works for you.
I like that. Thank you, Preston. Appreciate that. Okay, so you guys, let's move in. And again, if questions come in, Angie, I'll grab those after we get through some of the home stuff and we can get to as many as we have time for. I want to share with you all, and again, we will put this in the Q&A at the end of the session as well. There are a couple of new resources that you have on auto and home best practices. And this is the auto piece right here. This is not meant for you to be able to read this right here in the session on the screen, but it does talk about the best practices for building quotes accurately and efficiently. You can find it on the Sales Pro Toolbox. Again, we'll share it at the end of the session, but a couple of highlights. It starts with liability limits, and we don't just want to match what the client had with their previous insurer, but we really want to make sure that we take the time to determine what their liability needs are, talk through their assets, their income, their risk tolerance, their deductible, help them understand what those numbers really mean in case they do get in a serious accident. A lot of people don't understand their liability coverage. It's our job to explain that in a way that makes sense and make sure that we're providing recommendations that are specifically tailored to them. That'll help the long-term relationship as well, right? So this sheet talks a little bit about educating on deductible options, not assuming what they want, but talk them through their choices. And ultimately, it's about empowering the client and presenting that full picture of coverages, discounts, deductibles, whatever you're talking about there, and letting them decide what's best, but helping educate them on that, all right? That will be available again at the end of the session. So we won't talk any more about that, but I want to make sure that you know that that's there. One other thing I'm going to ask from the group, if you guys can do this for me, I'm going to pause. This is a 3-minute pulse check here on auto. And once I click this next button, it's going to pop up a Microsoft form. When you click on that, you only have 3 minutes to complete it. If you're done before the allotted time, please give me some emojis. Maybe I'll remind you to ask for that. But it will help us when we gather your responses to address any future needs that you all might have out there. Okay, so there's the form. If you want to go ahead and click that, it'll take you 3 minutes. It'll probably take you less than 3 minutes, but it's set to no more than 3 minutes. So I'll pause for a minute for you guys to do that. All right, I see some of you already giving me a thumbs up that you're done with this. If you're done, give me a thumbs up and we'll just continue to move on. I don't want to wait the full 3 minutes if you guys are finished. Okay, perfect. And Preston, I know we're going to move into home here in a second, but Preston, do you mind us catching this quick question about leads in the chat first, if that's okay?
Yeah, that's totally fine. Yeah, so
Okay.
obviously when I came in.
You saw it already?
Yeah, I saw it. So, yeah, when I came in, I'm a scratch rep, and obviously when you're a scratch, there's not a ton of people just calling you. So I started buying a bunch of stuff. The company I went with was EverQuote. And I will tell you right now, not to make this all about leads, but if you're going to buy them, I would just do home leads. I would never do auto. And that's something I learned by spending much money on leads. So, because everybody that has a home will probably have some type of car. So you're just knocking out 2 with 1. Better credit reports with auto, or I mean with homeowners too. So, yeah.
All right, thank you, Preston, for that. And Yvette, hopefully that helped. All right, so we will move on now and get into some of our home content. This is where accuracy absolutely matters in home quotes, and we're specifically going to address part of the valuation today more than we're going to talk about a lot of the coverages, because our district leaders have found that we have some discrepancies here when it comes to valuations and homes. And I want to share a case study with you. And on homes, and Preston will talk about this too, like if we're not accurate on that valuation and getting the square footage right and the different features of the home, like it can significantly affect your quote. Okay, the coverage is scan too, right? Deductible, but we're talking like significantly affect your quote. We have such a big spread in one home and a large spread of the valuation. So here's what I'm going to show you. It's going to make sense here in just a minute. I want to share this case study with you all. This is a case study where one of our district leaders had 25 participants in his district. And these 25 participants were made up of reps, licensed service assistants, associate agents, but really to see, hey, if I give everybody this one home, I want to see what happens here with the quote. So each participant was given the same information on the same home, baseline assumptions to work with. They were given a Zillow link to a property, all working with the same address. And the housing, you know, the Zillow link included details, of course, such as like the price, the address, the number of bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, all of those things. And then everybody entered the same address. So there were some pre-fills that came into the system for the valuation. But all of these 25 participants were tasked with building a home quote for the same house, all right? And these quotes were calibrated on several key factors, not just the valuation, but when the quote came out, the deductibles, square footage, of course, and the premium. So I'll talk about some of that. I will say this is very interesting because it really highlights how different individuals might approach quoting differently when they're given an identical starting point. So what happened here is there were a couple of key outcomes. We're not going to go over everything today, but I really want to go over some of the things that were significantly different when these participants were given the same exact home to come up with a quote on. Valuation, a couple of key outcomes. The box on the left here shows how much the shape and style varied from 25 participants. This particular home was standard, and many entered it as not standard. It was either economy or above average or custom, different than standard, okay? But that's what happened here on that piece of it, the shape and style. And the square footage, you can see the square footage here on the right. This varied, the square footage entered varied. And this could have been like what pulled in, it could have been Zillow, but it wasn't verified anywhere else. So the square footage in the final quote and the valuation varied from 2,040 to 4,080. That was the difference, or the spread, I should say, in the square footage. There was also a big variation in the use of the loss settlement option. There was pretty good alignment with the deductibles liability limits amongst the participants, but these couple things here stood out. A wide range of different approaches as to what was entered based on what pulled in as pre-fills. So those pre-fills are just starting points. So I'm going to let Preston talk a little bit about what he does with that too. But I want to take a look at this next chart. If you look at the bar chart on the top, 25 rep, the valuation varied from like 530,000 up to 1.1 million. And that's because of all the things that were changed in the valuation, or maybe some of them just left it at what pulled in, or they went off of exactly what was on Zillow. Very high there as far as the spread on that. And then the bottom bar chart, this is the spread on the premium that they came up with. So imagine here, you've got a prospect, you're talking to them about their premium, and you've got this high end to low end. I mean, we're talking thousands of dollars in the premium. And of course, that's going to vary by the deductible entered, the endorsements, things like that. They were all given some of that baseline stuff to work with, but really that valuation caused a huge spread in the premium as well. Okay. So that's interesting. With that being said, I'm going to pull up a couple things here in the home system, and then I'm going to turn it over to Preston to talk a little bit about what he does when it comes to homes and especially valuations and verifying some of that stuff. So here on this next slide, right here, total finished square feet. So this is just a snapshot, a screenshot here of the system, right? Total finished square feet. There is only one right answer for this on the total square footage. One right answer for this spot. Sometimes it might be somebody left in what pre-filled, and that might not be accurate. And then sometimes they might enter what Zillow has, and that included the basement or the garage in the square footage. I mean, my own house on Zillow, it's a picture of my neighbor's house. It's not even my house, which I think is really interesting. But that's what can happen here in the square footage. And if this piece is wrong, where there's only one answer, it's going to throw off your finished basement and other areas, which can again severely throw off your valuation. So pre-fills and Zillow, again, just a starting point. The next thing I want to point out is the home grade here, the home quality grade. When you pick from economy, standard, above average, custom, premium, like clicking on that little question mark next to the home quality grade, if you aren't sure, read some of those descriptions. And a lot of the things in the system have that. So click that there. It'll give you a little description of some of those things, and that might help you if you haven't been doing that. Next thing here, and I got an example of that, this little question mark right here next to the total finished square feet. This is to remind you what to include in that, and that's right here. I just clicked, I clicked that little question mark. This is what's going to pop up. So this has to be accurate for you to get an accurate valuation. And ultimately, it has to be verified with the client. And again, Preston's going to talk about that in a minute. So number of stories. The house we worked with pulled into one story. Guess what? It was a two-story house. All right. We had to verify that. We had to look at that. You can tell by the picture it's a two-story house, but maybe it pulled into one story because most of the houses in the neighborhood might be one story. That can happen. It's not always accurate from there. Basement and percent of lowest level finished. Again, you can click that question mark if you need to, but imagine you included the basement already and the total finished square footage on that first spot. And then on top of that, you enter 50% or 75 here. What's going to happen? Like that overall square footage, if that's wrong and you're entering something finished here, again, it's going to severely drive up that replacement cost. So I'm going to bring Preston in here just a minute, but I would say finally for here, just, and this comes straight from our home product team, like we recommend on focusing on the major dwelling characteristics to make sure those are accurate, like the number of stories, the square footage, attached garage, quality grade, like not going into the details of, oh, how many bedrooms, the size of the bedrooms, the size of the closets, the hallways, etc. Like it's a balance on getting that accurate replacement cost and the time you spend on it, but those major things have to be validated. So again, I'm going to bring you in, Preston, if you don't mind here, throwing this out to the group. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A. But Preston, you can start by maybe talking a little bit about how you typically, like if you're going to quote a home, it pulls something in, right? And then what do you typically do after that? Do you go to Zillow, the assessor's website? Like what tools are you using and how are you coming up with some of that stuff?
Yeah, good question. I'm always going to Zillow, usually just to look at the house itself. Because sometimes even on the pre-population, it'll have like a picture of the home. And like, all right, at least it has the right thing on the tool. Now, obviously, as you know, like the odds of it being correct all the way through are just low. So, I mean, you could be looking at a house that's all brick and it says it's cedar, exterior. And you're like, all right, I don't think this is all right. So I think the biggest thing is to figure out square footage. Like that's the biggest mistake that you can make. But also that's the biggest thing that's going to impact the pricing too. You know, if you, like you said earlier, if you include the garage that's attached, or if you include the basement, and then you go ahead and you select the basement's finished at 75%, you're just not going to win the quote. Like there's just no way, unless they did the same thing at the other company, which the odds are probably lower. Like they probably did it correctly. So I think the biggest thing is just validating the square footage. Usually when it comes to like the stories, obviously you can tell like, all right, that's a two-story house and all the simple things. I think the hardest part is the square footage and just making sure that's correct. And then sometimes the roof here, but that just depends. You can always just talk to the potential client, just be like, hey, what's the year up roof? And they'll get that info too.
Yeah, and also Preston, when you talk about the square footage, so I think, hang on real quick. Kim has a question. I want to go back to that square footage because I can bring up here what I just talked about on that front page, but Kim has a question, just to clarify, if the basement is finished, would you include that in the final square foot amount? So Preston, if you want to talk a little bit about that, and then I can give the description of what's under that little question mark in the first, it's not the basement when you enter that total square feet in the first spot, correct?
I would go to the next slide or the next, like, once you go continue on, and then you can just mark the basement finished and then give the percentage. If it's like a home that's listed on the market, you could just go through the pictures. Obviously, that's the most ideal, and you can give it a percent estimate. Or if you can't get pictures, just ask them like, hey, what's the basement percentage you think that's finished? They'll probably give you a number.
Yeah, so thank you, Preston, for sharing that. And if you go back to, and you guys, I can go back to where we were here real quick, just to give you an idea. I want to make sure everybody, because after the last one we did, there were people that like, I didn't even know that question mark was there. I was like, okay. So see these little question marks, and Kim, this might help you. If you go back here to the square footage, like you click on that little question mark, it tells you exactly what to include in that spot. And then it tells you what to include and how to calculate that finished basement percentage over here. So those are specifically two things that we have in here. I will go into your quoting system and make sure to check those little question marks. And it will give you a description. But Preston, you did a great job talking about what you do for that. So thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. So real quick, I'll get to the questions in the chat box here in a moment. But Preston, the other question I have for you, what are there any red flags that you look for that might indicate like, oh, this seems way off? That any red flags that might indicate that the valuation isn't accurate? I know you check it every single time anyway, and probably verify with the client, because ultimately, like, that's what you have to do. And I'm guessing that the client appreciates that, right?
Yeah, I think that goes a long way, because if you're just building it for them and you're talking it out to them, then they're going to just have more trust with you. Obviously, when you're like, hey, I'm taking the time to give you a phone call and make sure that, the basement is 60% finished. Like, all right, you're already off to a good start, because you're like, hey, I'm trying to make this just for you, and I'm trying to make this correct. And that does go a long way, just building trust. Obviously, sometimes, especially now, like a lot of the businesses, they just, they're just calling, they're getting everything done as fast as possible. Like, State Farm, it's a numbers game. It's not as personalized. That's just what it is. So it's a nice touch. It's a nice add-on to that, I think, to just, but I think red flags is kind of like what I said earlier and kind of what you touched on. Like, it's a 2-story house and it just says 1. You're like, all right, well, we're off to a slow start. So let's go ahead and edit this and make sure it's all correct. But, yeah, or the siding, just simple things that are off. You're like, all right, we're gonna have to go through this whole thing and just make sure it looks correct.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Preston, for that. And then what might be your advice to some reps who are like, oh yeah, I don't like changing a bunch of stuff in there because they're just a little unsure about adjusting some of those inputs that flood in, and again, the last session we had someone say like, oh, I've never checked my assessor's website. Like most cities, towns, villages, I mean, I live in a little village and they have an assessor's website for our county. Like most places have that. And would you say that you found that is probably more accurate than some of the Zillow or Realtor.com type spots, Preston?
Yeah, it's definitely more accurate, especially like if you're going off of the pricing on when the house was sold and stuff. If you're quoting a home that just sold within the past 3 years and your replacement cost is lower than that, or it's equal to, then you're probably doing something a little bit off, I would say. So it could be a good tool. I know some county assessors pages will actually give square footage. So like, obviously it depends what county you're in. So if you check that, like it could be a really good resource for some people, but other county sites could be, less of a resource. But changing stuff up, I think it's a little bit intimidating, because you're like, I don't want to screw this up, and I don't want this to be incorrect, and I don't want to just mess with anything. I think the more that you kind of mess around with the system and play with the numbers, and then you like actually are used to editing quotes, it just gives you more confidence. It's the same thing as just the more you do it, you're just practicing every time. So I think that's a good way to go about it. The more you do it, the more comfortable you get.
Yeah, I like that. Like with anything, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Hey, let's talk about that for a second too, because you mentioned something about like, the price being different from what they bought it from. So I'm sure you probably have that come up where people are like, oh, wait, that, what do you mean? My house, I didn't buy my house for that amount, or I don't, that's not what it's assessed at, or more or less. And it depends on where you live. Sometimes that can be different, right? So how do you address that if the client's questioning some of that?
Yeah, that's probably the most common question that we all get with any type of homeowner policies. I remember I was sitting at like a coffee shop when I was new, and I was kind of laying it out to somebody that I knew well. Then he was switching over, and he was like, "I couldn't sell my house for that today. I couldn't even get half, or whatever of that price." And I'm like, "Well, this is the replacement cost. So this is just for, all the materials to build your house exactly the way it is." I think one thing that's a little interesting is if you have a home that's in like a really nice lot. I know Julie and I, we kind of talked because you used to write business at Lake Geneva, and the lot itself is way more valuable than maybe the materials. So like if it's in a specific location like that, or let's say it was in like Chicago, like in a really nice area where the homes are really expensive, the materials may not be the same cost as their purchasing price. But most of the time, I would use the assessor site as, especially in Champaign, Illinois, I would use the assessor site just as a, like a benchmark to be like, hey, we're pretty close here, or at least we're on the right track. I think it's a good tool.
Awesome. Thank you, Preston. Appreciate that. Hey, Micah is asking, and I just looked this up and clicked to know you guys. So, Michael is asking, on a bi-level, are both levels included in the square footage, or is it only the top level counted with 100% shallow basement? So I have, and we are going to put some resources in the Q&A at the end, Micah, for you on valuations, but I do have the answer to that right and click to know. But do you have anything on that, Preston?
Just go with what you got. Honestly, that's a really good question. That's a really good question.
And I bet you, I can't be positive, but I'm pretty sure it might explain that in the little question mark in the system. Okay, I'm not positive about that piece, but I do have, there is an article in Click to Know that says, do I include the lower levels and the total square foot when it comes to bi-level, tri-level? So there's called a bi-level and split level guide. So I will just go ahead and reply here to your question, Micah. Put that exact article. All you have to do is go to Click to Know, look that up, and you're going to see all of that right there. Okay, and we are going to put some of those in the Q&A at the end. Okay. Oh, go ahead, Preston. You have
No, I just didn't want to give bad information there. I didn't want to give bad information.
Yeah, no, I don't want you to get into too many details there. I really want you to kind of share just what you do and how you do it. So Micah, that should help you if you search that and Click to Know. Anything else, Angie? I don't see any other questions coming in, or we're good on the question front for now, right? Yes. Okay, perfect. Okay. Well, I will thank you, Preston. I have a few more things to go over. And Preston, if you're going to hang on, if anything else comes in the chat before the end and I need to refer back to you, I can bring you back. But thank you for sharing today. And you guys, do me a favor, find your emoji up there and give Preston some hearts or some applause or something to thank him for all of his information today. We appreciate Preston sharing his insights. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Julie. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, you guys, same thing as auto. We have a one pager for home best practices here. This is just a snapshot of what that looks like. And it talks a little bit about not relying on automated systems. Take the time to review and confirm the details with the client. Cross-reference some of the tools that you might have available to you, whether that's the assessor, Zillow, someone else said realtor.com last week. Just make it a thorough approach to help prevent underinsurance or overinsurance, which both can significantly cause issues down the road. Validate everything, what the system pulls in, validate that with the client, engage with the client, ask detailed questions about their property. It makes them feel important and it makes them feel like you care, because you do. You want to make sure you get it right because you're going to be the one talking to them come claim time. All right, so I will move on from there. I want to talk to you a little bit about the reports that you asked about that you do have access to, but really what we're talking about here, your call to action, is loading all your quotes with discounts, all discounts up front, especially those 4 that we talked about on auto. Don't leave those off. Go into this discount utilization report that I'm about to show you, see what percentage you've got there, and make it a goal for yourself to increase that if you want, all right? Lowest, most accurate quote, adding all the discounts up front, educating clients and prospects on coverages and discounts, and then validating those valuations, being thorough on that. and tracking your performance. And that does have to do with these reports. I'm going to share a couple of things with you. This is where you're going to find that discount utilization report. It's under the Enterprise Reporting Hub. We will drop the link to that in the Q&A here in a couple minutes at the end. What you're going to do there is you're going to choose the rep option, and then you're going to click on the line of business that you're interested in viewing. And then from there, it's going to take you into Tableau. All right. So for example, with that auto, it can help you understand your four stack discount usage. And then also your PLMM, if you're curious about some of that for your state, your personal lines market manager can help you with that on a state level and what that looks like. Okay. And you know, as a business owner, what gets measured and monitored gets done. So staying on top of your metrics when it comes to that. Another thing that is important that you don't have access to, but your district leader does, and they can help you with this. They can look at your numbers, help you with this, guide you on some of these things, is how many quotes are you doing and what percentage of those are converting to new business and what percentage of those are you putting on the book? So take this here for a minute on the slide. Look at the very last line here. For example, this is a rep who had 85 quotes in January, and 8.2% of those actually converted to be on the books. All right. So again, you do not have access to this actual report because district leader has access to these numbers. So that's another thing you can check out. If you did not know that was there, check with your district leader on that one. Okay, quick pulse check. I don't see any more questions coming in the chat that I know of right now. But I want to ask you, if you don't mind filling out the same thing you filled out on auto, if you could fill that out on home for us. It just helps us when we're going to be guiding you and making econs for you in the future. You'll have 3 minutes again. Your responses are going to help us for your future needs. If you don't mind taking a chance to fill that out real quick, and then I'll drop the resources in the chat. Okay, you guys want to give me a thumbs up when you're done with that, and I will go ahead and drop everything in the chat here, or in the Q&A. Sorry, I call it a chat, but it is a Q&A. That's your way to communicate with us during this session, so we appreciate that. It looks like we did get to most of these questions, so if there's anything else that you have, drop that in there, and we do have a couple of minutes here, but I'm going to go ahead and, Angie, I will drop the resources. They're listed right here on the screen, you all. You can click on these links if you'd like. You can save them there if you want, but I am going to drop these in the Q&A. So give me a second to do that. And then, Angie, if there are any other questions that we might have for Preston or us, either way is fine, but looks like we have a little bit of time. No more? We're good? There's one more that's still. Okay. Okay, I got the resources in there. So all of that is there for you. Let me check this question box here. Okay, David, I have to ask before I forget, does anyone have issues when going back into the valuation? Exactly, changing the categories to a different category. Oh, going from standard to premium, and any fixes on that so it doesn't go through our quoting off. David, I can maybe pull Preston back in to see if he's seen that. And Preston,
I just saw that. Honestly, like, I think he means with like the quality, right?
Yeah.
I haven't really had that, to be honest. If I do, like, I'll just close out and go back in to the quote. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, David, I don't know if something else maybe that you're changing in the valuation is causing that to happen. Where it changes it, but I will say the link up above validating the valuation, there might be some information in there about that too, so that might help you. Sorry about that. I hope you get that figured out. It looks like a couple people commented there too, so you got some insight there on that. Thank you, David, for your question, and thank you all for your help on that one. I appreciate that. That's perfect. Okay, thanks, Preston. And I don't think I see anything else. Oh, Scott asked, are you click and save? So there's that. So yeah, David, there's some info there for you in the Q&A, hopefully, in response to your question. You've got a few comments there. So thank you to the group for that. I appreciate that. All right. I do believe that's it for today. We're ending a little bit early. Preston, any final words from you?
No, thanks for having me. I think, since a lot of people have staff stuff, maybe like just quote a home as somebody else on your staff did, if they do some of the quoting, and just see what the premium comes out to and what the difference is. You never know. You could be 500 lower or higher, and then just see what the disconnect is. So that's the one thing I have.